My name is Lauren, I'm 41 years old, a captain in the U.S. Army, my voice steadying despite the knot in my chest. I stood at the edge of our family's backyard, the evening air thrumming with laughter from my dad's friends as they teased him over his career choice. Just a security guard, huh, they chimed, their guffaws echoing around me like a cacophony I wanted to drown out. I swallowed hard, feeling my heartbeat quicken beneath the weight of their mockery. At 41, as a captain in the U.S. Army, I'd seen battlefields and sacrifices that these men could never comprehend. Yet here I was, feeling the sting of their derision as I glanced at my father, a man whose job had never defined him. He wore a bemused smile, but I could see the flicker of discomfort in his eyes as he tried to brush off their jabs. I took a deep breath, willing my tight chest to loosen, as I recalled that his security guard role was only temporary, a means to an end after years of working in a grocery store. I wanted to defend him, to tell these men that his job was not a failure, but rather a testament to his resilience. At least he's working, I wanted to scream, but my throat felt constricted. Instead, I focused on the sunset, the orange hues blending into the navy expanse that loomed above us, a reminder that there was a world far beyond this backyard and all the judgments contained within it. Then, just as my father was about to speak up and set the record straight, the news abruptly flashed on the small television in the corner of the porch. My fingers instinctively curled into fists at my sides. I could feel the air shift, the laughter dying mid-chuckle as the news anchor's face morphed into a mask of seriousness. We interrupt this program for breaking news. My heart raced, the lightness of the moment quickly replaced with a heavy dread. I exchanged glances with my dad, we both knew that look all too well. The report was about a recent attack overseas, a place where I had been stationed not long ago. My belly dropped as the screen displayed a list of names. I recognized one, the soldier who had stood beside me during countless missions, entrusted with my safety. He was now one of the many who had paid the ultimate price. As the anchor spoke about him in somber tones, I felt a chill creep down my spine, pulling my breath into short bursts. The laughter from earlier morphed into a hollow ache inside me. My father's wariness reflected my own as I squeezed my eyes shut, holding back tears for my friend and all those affected by this senseless violence. The men gathered around the television were no longer laughing, their faces twisted in confusion, disbelief, and a reluctant understanding. For a moment, we all stood united in this palpable silence, the weight of the news transcending any prior banter. I opened my eyes slowly, aware that the tension in the air had shifted from mockery to something heavier, more profound. They may have laughed when my dad introduced me as just a security guard, but now they were forced to acknowledge the sacrifices we made. In that moment, I felt the indelible truth that echoed in my chest, our lives weren't defined by occupations but by our courage to face whatever lay ahead, even in the most perilous of times. Before I go on, subscribe to the channel. Here, we tell the untold stories of military women, courage, sacrifice, and truth. Your support helps more voices like mine be heard. I stood at the threshold of the family lounge, the laughter spilling out from our dining room like sunlight through the clouds. My dad had always had a knack for jokes, and he could light up the room with his warmth, but today felt different. I could hear my aunt's sharp chuckle, her voice rising above the laughter, and I braced myself for the moment of truth. Lauren? Just a security guard, she'd blurted out earlier, and the room erupted in snickers. It cut deeper than any blade could. They didn't see the weight of my uniform, the years of sacrifice, or the late nights spent in the company of soldiers who were, in many ways, my family. I clung to that thought as I made my way deeper into the distorting echo of their mirth. It wasn't just about the rank, it was about the choices I made, the pride I wore like a second skin. Sure, I was a captain in the army, and yes, I led men and women into fraught situations, but my current role felt like a step back, a job that left an ironic taste in my mouth. Security was noble enough, but it paled compared to the chaos of combat, the palpable adrenaline of missions that put my very being on the line. My family didn't understand that every assignment offered its own purpose, its own battles. I wanted to scream that I wasn't just standing watch, I was guarding the freedoms we cherished, even if they dismissed that truth behind their laughter. Then, the television flickered on unexpectedly, cutting through the laughter like a dagger. I glanced over to see the anchor's face, pale and serious, as she delivered breaking news. My heart raced as I caught a few key words: escalation, troops, deployment. The transition from joviality to somber reality was palpable, like a thunderous storm rolling in after a sunny day. I could see my family's expressions shifting, their mirth extinguished as they processed what was unfolding on screen. I felt a hollow pit forming in my stomach. Here I was, standing in a room filled with laughter one moment, and now the weight of responsibility and the grim specter of my next mission hovered over me. As the report continued, detailing a potential international crisis, I felt every eye in the room swivel toward me, searching for answers. They needed an anchor, and in that moment, I was it. My heart sank further. I could feel their expectations pressing down on me. Would they see me as the soldier I've trained to be, or would they only remember the girl they teased for being just a security guard? I straightened my back, ready to shake off the self-doubt that lingered like a specter. I was more than the title they joked about. I was forged in the fire of teamwork, leadership, and sacrifice, and I needed to remind them of that as we teetered on the brink of uncertainty. In that quiet moment of intensity, my father broke the silence. "Lauren, what do you think about this?" There was a seriousness in his tone that made my heart swell and tighten at once. The laughter was gone now, replaced by a heavy expectation that was both daunting and galvanizing. I took a breath, remembering the gravity of my duties, the lives that depended on decisions made at a moment's notice. "It's time to prepare," I said, my voice steady as I locked eyes with my family. They were no longer laughing. They were listening. And in that moment of vulnerability, I felt the boundaries between us blur, as if the shared concern for what lay ahead had pulled us into a single, collective purpose. The laughter echoed around the crowded room, bouncing off the walls like hostile fire. I stood frozen, the punchline of some joke I hadn't been privy to. "Just a security guard," my dad had said, a hint of pride in his voice, as if he were announcing my promotion to president. I could almost see the memories flash behind his eyes, all the times I had suited up in combat gear instead of a uniform adorned with a shiny badge. It was the kind of laughter that cut deep, turning what should have been a proud moment into something heavy and suffocating. I shifted uncomfortably in my seat, longing to fade into the background. When you've watched comrades fall, seen the chaos of a firefight, the last thing you want is to be reduced to a joke. I could feel the old, familiar anger simmering in my chest, a bitter reminder of those who had never understood the weight of my service. My heart raced as I thought of my girls back at home, the sacrifices I made for their safety. Was that how I was viewed? A mere guardian of a parking lot, laughingstock of family gatherings? I swallowed hard, forcing myself to stay grounded as memories rushed back uninvited. The first time I knew I wanted to wear the uniform, I was just a little girl, flicking through the channels on our old TV. I stumbled upon a news report covering a unit's deployment, soldiers walking proudly, weapons in hand. They were heroes, ordinary people doing extraordinary things, and in that moment, I knew I would be one of them. My heart raced as the screen flickered with flashes of bravery and sacrifice. I was captivated by the honor they represented, a feeling that would soon become a part of who I am, woven into my very fabric. Mom would later tell me I was too stubborn to do anything else. It never felt stubborn, it felt like destiny. Yet, standing there with laughter ringing in my ears, I felt that destiny slipping away. I remembered my first combat deployment, the adrenaline surging through my veins, the weight of my weapon feeling like an extension of my own body. It had been terrifying and exhilarating all at once. I had been trained for years, and that moment was the culmination of my efforts. I had faced fears I didn't even know existed. I survived things that haunted my nights, shadows of memories that flickered in my mind like the static noise of the television as I made my way home. The weight of those experiences felt like a betrayal now, overshadowed by a punchline. As the laughter faded, the room grew silent, but I could still hear the echoes of my past, the echoes of what I became amidst turmoil and sacrifice. I blinked back tears, unable to voice the pain because the irony was not lost on me. Here I was, a captain in the U.S. Army, a leader trained to protect, yet I felt like a fool standing before my family. My father thought he was uplifting me, but he didn't realize how much unnecessary hurt had been masked behind laughter. The news anchor's voice filled the room, and for a moment, I was thankful for the distraction, yet I couldn't help but wonder if the footage would shine a light on what I had fought for, or simply serve as another reminder of how far away I still felt from home. I remember the summer afternoons spent at my grandparents' house, where the air was thick with the scent of overripe peaches and the murmurs of family gossip swirled like the dust motes dancing in the sunlight. The laughter of my cousins would fill the air, punctuated by my grandmother's playful scolding when the boys chased each other around the warm, floral wallpapered living room. I watched my dad, a figure of stoic strength among the chaotic energy of family gatherings, sitting in his oversized armchair, a world away from the laughter as every joke about him echoed around the room. "He's just a security guard," they'd say, but I could see the irritation etched on his face behind an ever-present smile, a mask he wore so well. I look back now and realize how those moments of seemingly innocent jests were layered with something deeper. He was proud of his role. The uniform meant more than just a job to him. It was about protecting others, a responsibility he valued. Still, when we'd sit around the dinner table, the topic would inevitably shift to the others: engineers, doctors, those with degrees framed on their walls, each accomplishment a brick in the wall that separated his work from theirs. I didn't understand the chasm then, focusing instead on the glimmer of hurt in his eyes when certain family members made their jokes. It struck me as cruel, a harsh reminder of how not all jobs were held in equal regard, no matter how hard one worked. The summer before I enlisted, I overheard my dad talking to my mom late at night. Their hushed voices carried through the thin walls, and I strained to catch every word. "I wish they'd see the value in all types of work," he said, a quiet desperation in his tone. "I don't want her to think that what I do isn't enough." My heart ached at the thought of him wanting better for me, his belief in my potential still sharp and unwavering despite the dismissive laughter that often surrounded him. It was in that moment I started to understand my own path. I wanted to show him, show all of them, that serving one's country could be as noble as any profession. Joining the army was more than a career move, it was an act of defiance. When I donned that uniform, I felt a surge of purpose that silenced the noise of past judgments. I wanted to proudly wear something that would make them think twice. The first time I was called captain, something in me snapped into focus. I could almost hear my father's voice in my head: "You're not just a title, you carry responsibility." Each day, as I trained and fought for a cause greater than myself, I hoped it would one day rewrite the narrative painted by laughter that echoed off my father's heart. Years after I took that plunge, the family dynamics shifted. With my deployments, I earned my stripes, both literally and metaphorically. I caught the glimpses of respect surfacing in my father's eyes when he spoke of me to others. The laughter had changed. No longer dismissive, it became a source of pride for him. And yet, it stung when the news broke that summer, showing the grim realities of conflict. Suddenly, what I did wasn't just a job, it carried weight, and the laughter that had once stung now felt like a ghost, a reminder of the shifting tides of perception. I had fought to be seen, not as just something, but as a protector, a fighter, and a daughter who would never allow her father's worth to be minimized again. I remember that moment in the officers' lounge, the room alive with laughter and the clink of mugs filled with coffee. My dad had just finished his speech, boasting that I was serving my country, even if the role was just a security guard. I should have felt proud, but instead, I felt the heat rise to my cheeks as my peers snickered at the irony. They thought they knew better, that they were the real protectors of our nation. It stung deeper than any physical wound I'd ever sustained in the battalion, a reminder of the constant wrestling I faced between duty and self-worth. As I pored over my responsibilities, I reminded myself that every position in the Army had its significance. Security wasn't just about watching doors, it was about safeguarding lives and assets, laying the groundwork for broader operations. But saying that out loud felt like whispering into a chasm, my voice echoing back with a hollow reassurance. I wanted to scream that my worth wasn't tied to the title I held. My heart raced as I thought back to the years of training, the sacrifices I made, not to prove anyone wrong, but to prove to myself that I belonged. Yet, with every laugh directed at my dad's words, I felt the familiar creeping doubt. I had joined the ranks with dreams of higher command, a vision of leading troops in combat, not standing guard at a checkpoint. My hands curled into fists. Why was I wasting my potential? The mixture of frustration and embarrassment settled like a thick fog around me. I had to muster something, anything, to turn the tides and show them that my worth extended beyond laughter and light-hearted jabs. And then the news came on, capturing our attention with a breaking story about a base overseas. A security detail had faltered, and lives were lost. I felt the room go cold, all laughter evaporating as serious faces turned towards the screen. I held my breath, a strange kind of weight bearing down on me. I wanted to scream at the anchors, to remind them that I was more than just a face in a crowd. I had trained for this, fought for this. The storm of emotions roiled within me, anger and sadness blending into a deep sense of purpose. I felt the eyes of my peers on me, dissecting, judging. In that moment, I decided that I would use this as fuel. I would pour every ounce of my energy into proving that I could contribute more than my current role suggested. I could transform that laughter into respect, turn it into acknowledgement of my capabilities, both as a soldier and as a leader. This wasn't just about my dad's words, it was about stepping into my identity, embracing the journey ahead of me, and demonstrating my worth through unwavering commitment. I would show them that I was ready to rise beyond the expectations they set for me, even if it meant starting small. After all, every soldier has to carry their weight, regardless of the role. And I was ready to carry mine. I remember the day vividly, the laughter echoed in the back of my mind, a hollow sound that had no business existing in the moment. My father, worn and weathered by years of service, stood proud in his well-worn uniform, a stark contrast to the casual garb of my peers. "She's not just a security guard," he had said, his voice steady despite the chuckles around him. I thought maybe that would silence the laughter, but they only laughed harder, dismissing my role as trivial. As if guarding the very freedoms they took for granted didn't count for anything. It stung, a fresh reminder of how often I felt overlooked, and though I stood tall, it was as if my uniform draped heavy on my shoulders. That day carved a determination deep within me. The laughter was a bitter fuel, igniting something I hadn't realized was lying dormant. I threw myself into my duties with a fervor that surprised even me. Every morning, I woke before dawn, the sun barely breaking over the horizon as I laced up my boots. I drove myself harder, training longer. The work didn't just matter for me, it mattered for every person who'd ever scoffed or doubted the significance of what I did. I had to prove not just to them, but to myself, that being a captain in the army was about more than a title or a rank, it was about serving something greater. Weeks turned into months, and the laughter faded into an echo I could barely recognize. A pivotal moment came when we were called to assist in a training exercise aimed at honing our crisis response. As we prepared, I could feel the weight of my role pressing down, but this time it felt empowering. I coordinated with officers from various departments, ensuring that everything ran smoothly. There was a sense of purpose in the chaos, and I realized that the laughter I once clung to was nothing in the face of our mission. I could feel the respect of my teammates growing, their acknowledgement of my contributions palpable. For perhaps the first time, I felt seen, not just as a woman in a male-dominated field, but as a leader. Then one fateful evening, the news came on, rattling our quiet barracks. A breaking story about a situation we were involved in, a crisis that needed immediate attention, and suddenly, the laughter was replaced by urgency. I was thrust into the role of decision-maker, commanding my team with an authority that surprised me. We navigated the chaos together, our training kicking in as we responded with precision and dedication. In that moment, time stood still. I was no longer just an officer fulfilling a role. I was a part of something intrinsic, and the weight of the world felt lighter as we worked as one. After the dust settled and the situation was resolved, my father called. He was proud, his voice trembling slightly as he recounted how he told his friends about me. "They didn't laugh this time, Lauren," he said, emotion thick in his words. "They listened." It was more than I had hoped for. I had transformed that laughter into respect, not just earning it, but carving my own path. I realized that overcoming was not just about silencing the skeptics, it was about redefining who I was and leading with purpose. In that defining moment, I became not just a captain in the army but a testament to resilience. The laughter echoed in my ears long after my father finished speaking. I wasn't there when he said it, but I could imagine the way he must have held his head high, pride spilling from him as if he were presenting an award. "My daughter, Lauren, she's a security guard." To him, it was an honor. To everyone else, it might as well have been a punchline. Everyone laughed, and I wondered if it felt a bit like the time I stood in a briefing, explaining our strategy, only to be met with snickers as if I were a rookie out of my depth. It stung that day and that night, but that moment also planted a seed of defiance deep within me. I couldn't control their reactions, but I could control how I responded. That night, as I sat in my living room, the hum of the refrigerator seemed louder than usual, as if the silence of my thoughts was desperate to break free. I turned on the news to drown out my swirling emotions. The anchor spoke about a recent uptick in security-related incidents, citing the need for qualified personnel. They highlighted the role of security guards, explaining how they are the first line of defense in protecting our communities. My heart raced. They didn't mention job titles with condescension, they spoke with respect, recognizing the importance of those who watch over us. In that moment, I felt a flicker of vindication. My father, in his own way, had been right all along. It wasn't just about holding a title, it was about the impact, the service, and the responsibility that came with it. I realized that while they laughed, I had been working tirelessly, day after day, honing my skills. I've climbed the ranks in the army, becoming a captain, leading my team through harrowing missions. Each challenge taught me not only how to strategize but also how to adapt and overcome. It was a stark realization that I wasn't just a security guard to my father, I was a leader, someone committed to the protection and well-being of others. Those moments of laughter now felt like fuel for my journey rather than an obstacle. Reflecting on that laughter, it became apparent that my worth was never defined by how others saw me. I was driven by purpose, by the unwavering commitment to improve myself and make a difference. I've learned that growth sometimes requires us to stand alone, to face the doubts of others while remaining steadfast in our beliefs. When I slip into the uniform, whether it be the camouflaged one or the security gear, I carry that laughter with me as a reminder of where I started and how far I've come. It reminds me that each step, each challenge, is part of a greater journey, one that I am proud to navigate. And in that clarity, the laughter transforms from mockery to motivation, propelling me forward into an uncertain yet hopeful future. My father always had a knack for making me feel seen, even in the midst of the chaos that is my life as a captain in the army. I can still hear his laughter, that deep, rumbling sound that filled our small living room. It was a warmth I never quite appreciated until I became an adult. It was a Saturday afternoon, and we had friends over for a barbecue. The smell of grilled burgers hung in the air, mixing with the sound of children playing outside. My dad, with a twinkle in his eye, announced that I was just a security guard. The laughter erupted, a wave of teasing that washed over me, but I didn't let it dampen my spirit. I knew he was proud. He was just trying to make light of my role as a protector back home, while knowing fully well that my duties went far beyond that. The truth is, I had carried more than my share of loss during my years of service. Over the years, I had become accustomed to loss, learned to navigate around its sharp edges, even when it cut deep. My best friend, Sarah, had been overseas in a different battalion when she took her last breath for our country. I was in a meeting when the news came in. The air had gone stale, the laughter of my colleagues muted as I sat frozen in place. I could still hear my dad making jokes about my security guard role in the background, oblivious to the weight that would soon crush my chest. I had to remind myself that I had a duty, not just at work but to my friends and my family, to honor their sacrifices while still maintaining my strength. Days turned into weeks, and while I donned my uniform, I carried the burden of my grief like a phantom limb. I had to be strong, had to project an image of indomitable courage, but inside, I felt like a ghost wandering through my own life. Each time I heard laughter, my heart would ache for Sarah, for the joy we once shared. She had always believed I was destined for greatness, not just as a soldier but as a daughter and a friend. She had a way of making me feel empowered right before I went back to the front lines. I often wondered if I would have made her proud or if I was simply living in a shadow. Eventually, the laughter faded in my mind, overtaken by memories that I could barely hold onto without breaking. I remember pacing around the living room, my hands trembling, absorbing the silence that had replaced the mirth my father brought. I had accepted my grief, but that didn't make it any less isolating. And then one evening, I turned on the news, desperate for some semblance of normalcy. I watched as they reported on the latest developments overseas, a mixture of pride and sadness filling my chest. I wiped away tears, knowing my sacrifice, my service, was not just for me but for all those I had lost. It was in those moments, grappling with everything, that I learned laughter can coexist with pain. I still hear my dad's voice when I close my eyes, reminding me to hold on to the lightness, to laugh with those still by my side. So, while I stand before my team, a captain respected as a guardian, I know the truth behind my father's words. The irony of being seen as just a security guard allows me to find strength in vulnerability. I am more than just that. I am a survivor, a soldier, a daughter who carries the weight of love and loss, forging ahead even when the laughter seems far away. When I look back on that day, I can still hear the laughter echoing in my ears, the mockery laced with disbelief. I was sitting at the bar, nursing a beer, surrounded by faces that had changed little since high school. It was one of those small-town gatherings, where the whispers about who had left and who had come back flowed as freely as the drinks. It was meant to be a harmless catch-up, but that wasn't how it turned out. A security guard, someone snorted, shrugging off my career with a wave of their hand. They had no idea, none of them did, about the years of sacrifice and the weight I carried on my shoulders. As they laughed, I felt my heart sink. They saw my job as a step down, an embarrassment. But I had honored the role, serving my country in ways they couldn't imagine. Just as the laughter faded from the air, a flash of light broke through the heavy atmosphere, like a lightning bolt striking the ground. The muted TV in the corner of the bar suddenly blared to life, the news alert disrupting the haze of chatter. I turned my attention toward the screen, my stomach tightening as they reported on a recent deployment. Familiar names flooded back, faces from my past, soldiers I had trained alongside, who had become close friends, were now featured in a briefing that detailed the bravery of military personnel in the face of adversity. In that moment, there was a sense of pride mingled with pain, and I felt the familiar tug of duty. I knew each of those individuals, their stories woven into the fabric of my own experience. The laughter dimmed as the news segment continued, highlighting the heroic acts of those in uniform. There was Sergeant Alex, who had saved lives during a firefight, and Corporal Lisa, who had fearlessly led her team through hostile terrain. I watched my peers receive the accolades they deserved, and it struck me how the same people who had scoffed at my title now sat silent, absorbed by the gravity of the news. A knot formed in my throat as pride wrestled with the knowledge that every military member's sacrifice, including mine, had been dismissed just moments earlier. I remembered how hard I had worked to earn my stripes, but today, it was as if the laughter had never faded, just masked by the sudden solemnity of reality. As the news anchor recounted the bravery of these soldiers, the room shifted. I could see the changing expressions on their faces as the truth of what it meant to serve sank in. No longer was I just a security guard, a title that had once been wielded as a weapon against me. I was proud of my service, my commitment to a cause greater than myself. It took everything in me not to stand up and proclaim my worth, but I chose to remain seated, observing the change unfolding around me. Their initial mockery now left a palpable tension in the air, one that felt oddly empowering. In that moment, their laughter felt distant and hollow, overshadowed by the honor and dignity we fought to uphold. As the segment wrapped up, I noticed a few people turn toward me, their expressions shifting from dismissal to curiosity. I felt a sense of warmth spread through me, a flicker of recognition. They no longer saw me as just a guard, but as part of a brotherhood and sisterhood bound by shared experiences. I couldn't change their perceptions overnight, but I felt more grounded in my identity. The laughter had faded, replaced by a moment of respect that, however fleeting, reminded me why I took the path I chose. In that bar, amidst the remnants of laughter and disbelief, I understood that recognition comes not just in titles but in shared experiences, and I was ready to embrace that truth. Everyone laughed when my dad introduced me as a security guard. I could see the disbelief flitting across their faces, the way they leaned in, smirking, as if waiting for the punchline. I had spent the better part of 2 decades in uniform, leading troops into situations where laughter felt like a luxury. But the moment my father boasted about my simple job, it was as if all those years melted into a single, distorted joke. I swallowed my irritation, reminding myself that my worth wasn't defined by their perceptions. Still, I couldn't help but wonder if they'd change their minds if they knew what I really did. The room had been full of my father's colleagues, all of them drinking, swapping stories that hovered somewhere between mundane and absurd. And then there I was, the daughter with combat ribbons that gleamed beneath the chandelier's soft light, yet labeled as just another face in a security uniform. Just a guard, as if my service and sacrifice were mere footnotes. Anger bubbled beneath my skin, an itch I couldn't quite scratch. I wanted to scream that guarding a base or watching over sensitive information was as vital as anything else I'd done in my career. Instead, I clutched my drink, forcing a smile while my dad defended me with a pride that almost made it worth the trouble. But then, an unsettling shift filled the air. The clatter of laughter dipped, replaced by the low drone of the television in the corner. News anchors, faces grim, barely concealed the urgency of their words. A report surfaced, an attack overseas, somewhere my unit had been just weeks before. I felt the weight of every laugh I'd endured moments earlier come crashing back down on me. The jovial atmosphere evaporated, leaving behind a hollow anxiety. For a brief moment, I was frozen, my body conditioned to react in the face of chaos, yet here, I was just a daughter standing in a room full of strangers, watching the world unravel from my father's living room. I turned to my dad, whose expression had morphed from pride to horror, his laughter stolen by the stark reality of our profession. "They're in danger, aren't they?" he'd finally murmured, breaking the silence. I wanted to reassure him, to say that we had contingency plans, that we were trained to respond, but I could see the panic in his eyes, a father's instinct to protect. I battled against the tide of tears threatening to overtake my composure, wondering if my friends were safe, if I would have to call them soon with news of their fate. Nothing stung more than the potential helplessness that could drift into my thoughts, making a mockery of the laughter that had just echoed in the room. As I reached for my phone, a sense of urgency took over, drowning out the disbelief. I'd have to reach out, find out where my people were, what went wrong. I was a captain, a leader, I was supposed to protect them, navigate the chaos even from afar. And just like that, the laughter faded into the background, replaced by a resounding truth: there's no room for jokes when lives are on the line. I looked back at my father, a silent plea in my eyes, and he nodded, finally grasping the real weight of my role. In that moment, the laughter didn't matter. What did was how love and loyalty united us all in the face of danger, even if it meant facing the truth of what I'd been, what I had to protect. I still remember the laughter that erupted from the small gathering of relatives when my dad introduced me as a security guard. It wasn't the first time he'd answered a question about my career choice, but somehow this time felt different. I could see it in their faces, the disbelief mixed with thinly veiled pity. Being a soldier is nothing to scoff at. I've trained hard, given up comforts, pushed past boundaries, and yet there I was, the butt of the joke. It gnawed at me, even more so as I noticed my little brother, Timmy, trying to hide his grin. I brushed it off, but I won't deny that it stung a little. Inside, I wanted to scream, to let them know that wearing the uniform was more than just a job. It was an honor, a purpose I'd chosen willingly, a commitment to something bigger than myself. As the laughter faded, a knot formed in my stomach. I thought about all the sacrifices I'd made, the late nights in training, the time spent away from home, and the grueling physical and mental challenges I still faced. It wasn't just about the time I spent at work, it was the ethos behind it, the dedication to protect and serve. I opened my mouth to defend myself, to explain why this role mattered, but before I could find the words, the television flickered on in the background. The news anchor was delivering a breaking report, and I felt the color drain from my face as I recognized the footage. Suddenly, the laughter ceased, replaced by the grave seriousness of the news. Something had happened overseas, a situation spiraling out of control. Soldiers were in action, families were being affected, and in that moment, my heart raced uncontrollably. I felt a mix of relief and dread wash over me. I was trained for this, embedded in every fiber of my being, yet the reality seemed so far removed from those snickers and jokes. Here I was, a captain in the U.S. Army, responsible for leading and protecting, while those around me were just now beginning to grasp the weight of what I do. They shifted in their seats as images of my fellow servicemen filled the screen. It was hard to watch, almost as if the laughter from moments before had become a haunting echo, mocking the seriousness of the situation unfolding. I could see the concern wash over my dad's face, the moment he realized that I wasn't merely a security guard, I was a leader, a protector of those very lives that faced danger. It was an awakening for them, a moment of clarity that was bittersweet, marking a stark contrast with their earlier disbelief. I felt a mix of pride and frustration, pride in the role I play and frustration that it took an emergency for them to start understanding. It was difficult to gauge their reactions as they processed the information being presented. Conversations had shifted from laughter to hushed tones. The weight of reality settled heavily in the room, and I could see the heartache reflected in my family's eyes. They were beginning to comprehend that my life was not just routine, it was saturated with risks that they hadn't fully acknowledged before. I wanted to reach out, to reassure them that I was trained and equipped to handle whatever lay ahead, and yet, I felt vulnerable. I had always been the strong one, the one who wore her armor with pride, but there was fear lurking beneath the surface, fear that they would not understand, fear that they would worry more than they needed to. As the news anchor concluded the segment, I caught Timmy's eye across the room. His youthful innocence had shifted to something deeper, perhaps now he truly understood the implications of what I did every day. The corners of my mouth turned up slightly, a faint recognition passing between us. In that moment, laughter faded from memory, replaced by a profound understanding that my role wasn't just a job, it was a commitment that carried weight and responsibility. Perhaps now, they would start to see me for who I truly am, not just a soldier, but a protector in every sense of the word. As I stand here, my military insignia glinting in the afternoon sun, I can't help but reflect on the laughter that once rang in my ears. It was a cruel melody, a chorus of doubt and derision, echoing from those who believed my father's proud declaration, that I was a security guard, was a punchline rather than a stepping stone. They couldn't have known the truth that lay behind those words, nor could they have grasped the tenacity it takes to wear this uniform. Yet, today, as I stand on this podium, my heart swells with a deep-seated pride that I've earned, not only in service to my country but in claiming my identity against all odds. The irony of those moments hasn't escaped me. My journey has led me beyond those derisive chuckles, far from the confines of a preconceived notion. I've marched through deserts, navigated treacherous territories, and led my fellow soldiers with an unwavering resolve. I no longer crave their validation nor their acceptance. I've learned that my worth isn't dictated by superficial labels, but rather by the unwavering commitment I've shown to my country and comrades. The laughter of those who belittled me now feels distant, a fading echo that can't reach me anymore. It no longer signifies weakness, but serves instead as a reminder of how far I've come. Looking out at the crowd, I see faces full of respect and admiration, not mockery. The news report that played just moments before this moment was a testament to the strides I've made, my accomplishments, my service, and my voice being heard. This isn't just my story, it's a story of resilience, a celebration of breaking barriers. It's about standing tall, not just for myself, but for every young girl who once felt small, for every woman who has ever been underestimated. I've turned the laughter into fuel, igniting a fire that propels me forward, defying the odds and shattering their misconceptions. Today, as I adjust my cap and take a deep breath, I acknowledge my strength and the journey that got me here. I've embraced every moment, the setbacks, the challenges, and the triumphs, because they've all led to this. I am not merely a title, I am a captain in the U.S. Army, and I wear it with pride. I have found my voice where once there was silence, and I've taken my place among those who serve not for recognition, but for love of country and duty. In this moment, I am free from the weight of others' opinions, unshackled from the need for their approval. As I step down from this podium, I feel the sun on my face, warm and unyielding, an emblem of my own resilience. The laughter of the past has transformed into a triumphant song of strength that reverberates within me. I have woven my narrative into the fabric of this military, and with every step I take, I carry the legacy of those who have come before me and those who will follow. The shadows of doubt have been vanquished, and in their place, I stand like a sturdy oak tree, rooted and unshakable, preparing to weather any storm that may come my way. If you stayed with me until the end, thank you. Please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and tell me in the comments which city you're watching from.